City of Shadows. Chapter 3. City of No Saints. The next morning arrived like a threat. Sunlight didn't rise over Laurent. It seeped in, thick, gray, and reluctant, as if the sky itself had regrets. Victor Morano hadn't slept. He stood at his apartment window, a cigarette burning down to ash between his fingers, watching the rooftops across the street. Not for movement, just for change. Anything out of place. Because when a man like Winter steps into the light, nothing remains unchanged. Not the rules, not the faces, not even the city's breathing. Victor knew then that Winter wasn't building an army. He was building a belief, a quiet betrayal. By noon, Victor was in the Montello estate again. This time the air was sharper. Too many eyes. Too many whispers behind doors that didn't close all the way. Rafael Montello was waiting in the study, sitting in his father's chair, an act that told Victor more than any words could. Rafael wanted the old man's throne, and soon. "He threatened you?" Rafael asked, swirling dark liquor in a glass meant for older men. "He made an offer," Victor replied, "which you refused." It wasn't a question. It was a test. "I don't kneel to ghosts." Rafael stood, crossing the room. "You should have killed him." Victor smiled faintly. "Would have been hard with 10 feet of concrete and shadows between us." Rafael stepped closer. "You're not telling us everything." Victor tilted his head. "Neither are you." They stood in silence, the air between them thick with suspicion. Victor had worked for the Montellos long enough to know when something inside the family was splintering. And Rafael, always hot-blooded, always desperate to prove himself, was starting to make moves. Dangerous ones. Victor stepped away. "Tell your father what you want him to hear, but I'm going hunting. Southbridge and the Lost." That afternoon, Victor drove to Southbridge, the city's forgotten end, where the skyline vanished into rust and weeds. Here, buildings weren't condemned because no one cared enough to condemn them. Windows were shattered, walls tagged with names of crews that no longer existed. Time had no currency here. He parked near the old power station, climbed a stairwell that smelled of mildew and burned oil, and found himself in a room with no windows and 4 men who didn't flinch when he entered. The man at the center was Nico Lares, known in whispers as the Architect. He didn't deal in drugs or weapons. He dealt in information, blackmail, leaks, communications intercepts. The kind of man who had ears in every courtroom and a back door into every encrypted channel. "You're a hard man to find," Victor said. Nico gave a cold smile. "That's the point. I want everything you've got on Winter." The smile faded. "You want a ghost file?" "I've seen the ghost," Victor replied. "I need his bones." Nico nodded slowly, then turned to a rusted filing cabinet, pulled out a battered manila folder. It had no name, just a cold circle drawn in pen. He slid it across the table. Half the info's pre-collapse, black sites, MI-level assets turned rogue, multiple aliases, not one confirmed image. But the operations, they're real, coordinated. Surgical Victor flipped through the pages, diagrams, blurred surveillance shots, redacted transcripts. Entire networks dismantled without a trace, leaders removed without gunfire. And now he's here. Nico leaned in. If Winter is building a system, he's not doing it alone. Someone in this city gave him keys to the kingdom. Victor's jaw tightened. Someone high up, higher than the Montellos, higher than the Escarzas. Government? Nico gave a short, humorless laugh. What's left of it? Victor stared at the folder, then slowly closed it. "You just made yourself a target," he said. "No," Nico replied. "You just made us both one." The first warning. That night, Victor returned to his apartment to find his front door ajar. Not kicked in, not forced, just Open. He didn't enter. Instead, he circled the back stairwell, weapon drawn, and came in through the fire escape window. The apartment was untouched, except for one thing: a photo, left in the center of the dining table. It showed a woman, early 40s, dark hair, warm eyes, holding a boy no older than 8, smiling, ordinary. On the back of the photo, a single word: choose. Victor sat down slowly. The woman was Sophia, his sister. The boy was her son. They lived off-grid. No one was supposed to know. Winter knew. A conversation with the Don. Victor returned to the Montello estate under the cover of night, walking straight into Don Alberto's private garden. The old man was there, tending roses with a pair of shears as though he had nothing in the world to fear. "You said you wanted to know when the war began," Victor said. "It's begun." Don Alberto didn't look up. "I've known for weeks." Victor paused. "Then why do nothing?" Now the Don looked at him, eyes like smoke and stone. "Because I wanted to see if you would survive the opening move." Victor stepped closer. "Winter has people inside your house." Alberto nodded once. "I know." "Then why?" "Because some truths can't be removed like tumors," the Don interrupted. "They have to be exposed. Let them grow. Let them show their true size. Only then can you kill them completely." Victor stared at the man. "You're using me?" "I'm trusting you," Alberto corrected. "There's a difference." Victor left without another word. He didn't believe him. The second fire. At 2:13 a.m., a warehouse belonging to the Escarza family went up in flames. Arson, no survivors. Among the dead, 2 cousins of the Escarza underboss. No claim, no message. But Victor knew whose fire it was. Winter wasn't just escalating. He was cleansing, removing all that was outdated, all that belonged to the old city. And he was doing it with surgical elegance. Victor stared at the blaze from a nearby rooftop, wind howling around him. This wasn't a turf war anymore. It was an exorcism. Chapter 4. The first blade drawn. The city had changed overnight. It wasn't in the skyline or the traffic or the late-night murmurs of the news. It was in the eyes of the people, in the twitch of shoulders, in how men paused longer at red lights. As if the streets themselves were watching. As if the old ghosts had come back, not to haunt, but to reclaim. Victor Morano could feel it. Every alleyway he passed whispered secrets it hadn't told before. Every building seemed to lean inward, listening. Winter had struck, not with an army, but with precision. A surgical wound to the Underworld's chest. And now, everyone was waiting to see who would bleed out first. No longer the shadow. Victor didn't sleep. He couldn't. Not after the photograph. Not after seeing Sophia's face and realizing Winter had already gotten too close. For years he'd lived in silence, separate, hidden. He hadn't so much as texted Sophia in months for her own safety. And still, Winter had found her. That morning, Victor did what he hadn't done in over a decade. He went to her. The safe house was an old schoolhouse up in the hills above Laurent, overgrown, invisible from the road, reinforced with panic systems. She'd chosen it herself. Sophia opened the door with a half-formed smile, the kind siblings wear when too much time has passed. "You look like a man carrying ghosts," she said, stepping aside. "I'm carrying something worse," he replied. "Intentions." She led him into the living room, where her son Matteo sat cross-legged on the floor, building cities out of wooden blocks. Victor watched the boy for a long moment. Innocence like that had no place in his world. "They know where you are," he said. Sophia's breath caught. "Then I'll move again." "Number, you'll stay." She turned sharply. That doesn't make sense. It makes all the sense, Victor said. Because this is where they expect me to run. So I won't. You'll stay. I'll vanish. And when they reach for you again, I'll already have the knife at their throat. She looked at him, really looked. You're planning something. Victor nodded. I'm going to cut into the machine. The machine's beating heart. He knew where to start. Laurent wasn't powered by politics. It was powered by systems, delivery routes, encrypted comms, street-level distributors, black market arms pipelines. And someone had to keep those systems moving while winter rose from the depths. That someone was Thomas Drevik, the man known as the Quiet Accountant. Once an MI logistics operator, now the invisible hand behind every illegal transaction that didn't leave a trace. Victor tracked him for 2 days. Thomas never carried a weapon, never had guards. He was protected by silence and structure. He moved like a man certain of his place in the hierarchy, never realizing he'd just become the first pawn to fall. The interrogation. Victor cornered him in a hotel elevator. 15th floor, no cameras, no witnesses. Thomas Drevik, Victor said calmly. Thomas didn't flinch. You're making a mistake. You're right, Victor replied, pulling him against the elevator wall. I should have done this yesterday. The ride down was slow, deliberate. Thomas stared at his own reflection in the mirrored walls as if trying to memorize what he looked like before his world ended. Victor didn't speak again until they reached the underground garage. He shoved Thomas into the back of a car and drove. No destination, just silence and pressure. Only once they were deep in the outskirts, where satellite signals died and GPS blinked uselessly, did Victor speak. You're going to tell me how Winter moves his assets. Thomas gave a soft laugh, the kind born of arrogance. You don't know what you're doing. Victor didn't raise his voice. You're not important enough to be afraid yet, Thomas, but I can make you important. I can leave pieces of you in very visible places until Winter notices. Thomas blinked. Once. Then the fear crept in. Cracks in the structure. Thomas broke after 6 hours. He didn't give names, but he gave functions. A warehouse in West End, disguised as a recycling facility. Used to route encrypted comms between affiliates. A nightclub in Dock 9, House Rot. A place for laundering, for messaging, for coded meetings. A freight line through the city's underground metro, active even though the city claimed it was shut down years ago. Winter's building a decentralized system, Thomas said at last, trembling, lip bleeding. He doesn't control the pieces. He liberates them, makes them part of a larger design, like cells in a body. Kill one, and the body survives. Victor wrote every location down. Then he let Thomas go. Not because he was merciful, because Thomas would run now, loudly, desperately. Winter would hear it. Let him. First strike, House Rot. Victor didn't hesitate. 2 nights later, he was inside House Rot, dressed like a ghost, silent, shadowed, every movement planned with mechanical clarity. The place was drowning in color, reds, violets, pulsing white lights that masked the darkness beneath them. He walked through the crowd like a phantom. His eyes weren't on the dancers, or the laughter, or the drink. They were on the upper floor, where the real games were played. He reached the door, marked with a small inverted triangle, Winter's hidden sigil, and opened it. Inside, a control center disguised as a lounge. Monitors, audio feeds, signal tracing hardware. 2 men in suits monitoring dozens of screens. Victor took them both down in 12 seconds. Clean, quiet, final. He uploaded a virus into their mainframe, a tracker that would send every encrypted communication to a secure channel of his own. The moment he slipped out of the club, the first ping came in. A name, a meeting, a voice message. Winter had just scheduled a conference with someone codenamed Peregrine. Location: Laurent Waterworks. Time: 72 hours. The blood price. Victor returned home that night and found a knife stuck in his front door. Not an attack, a symbol. The blade was engraved with one phrase: seen. It wasn't fear he felt, it was confirmation. Winter now knew Victor wasn't watching from a distance anymore. He was inside the system. The Don makes a choice. When Victor returned to Don Alberto, he laid everything on the table: the locations, the systems, the meeting. The old man listened in silence. Then with a slow nod he spoke. "You've done what none of my blood dared." Victor blinked. "Which is?" "You struck first." The Don stood. "Then we strike again, and again, until Winter is no longer an idea." Victor's jaw tightened. "He won't go quietly." Alberto's voice was cold. "Then we drag him out screaming,